Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Meadville. This is our last Zoom meeting for this year. I was going to say semester. And next Sunday, we'll either be outside or in the dining room, depending on the weather. Even though we've been on Zoom, we continue to need and offer your financial gifts to sustain this church and its work in the community. To donate electronically, all you need to do is visit the church website, or you can mail your checks directly to Jody at the office. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the Early Learning Center that shares the second floor of our parish house building. Okay, now's time to unmute everybody and say hello again.
Hello.
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 Good morning.
Hello.
Well, good morning. The opening words are from a motivational speaker by the name of Story Waters, and I particularly like this one. When you are standing at a crossroads in your life, realize that the greatest block that you can put in front of yourself, with a capital S, is the idea that there is a right choice. So something to consider is there only one right choice or more than one? Is there one wrong choice or more than one as we reach crossroads in our lives? Thank you.
As Alex lights the chalice in the sanctuary, you might want to light a chalice at home and follow along as we talk the blessing. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Please join me at home in repeating the words of our covenant and mission in front of you on the screen. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion, social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual trust. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason and justice. The hymn for June, or at least for this session, is Just as Long as I Have Breath, and we owe a lot of thanks to the Sunny Hill UU Church in the South Hills of Pittsburgh.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If there
The reading this morning is one, I think either Rick or Karen had said it at one of the recent board meetings, and I could be wrong. But this poem that Wendell Berry, who's a contemporary, quite elderly American poet, wrote is quite famous. And this is the last part of it. Geese appear high above us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way. Clear in the ancient faith, what we need is here. And we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. And the question for the breakout rooms is, what new ways can UUCM partner with other organizations to support the larger community? Or if you want to look at it a little bit differently, how do we partner with the larger community in general? But the more specific, the better. Well, thank you everyone for being here on this beautiful day, and how it's going to be even more beautiful afternoon. Thanks to Joyce and Amy and Kirsten as always. Kirsten, I think this may be the last Sunday that you're going to be working with us, but maybe not. But anyway, before you wrap up your tenure with us, on behalf of everyone, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done, because it's really been enormously helpful.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to help.
You're welcome. And as Joyce said, this is our last regular church service of this year, AKA academic year, and what a year it has been. Did any of you read the local news this week that the 3 Catholic churches here in Meadville were going to consolidate? I found that rather interesting. And so I looked at the Meadville Tribune article, and it said, according to the dialysis, St. Agatha was formed in 1849, about 13 years after this church was built. St. Bridget followed in 1862, and St. Mary formed in 1909. We can imagine, though, what kinds of changes occurred back then, before any of us were born, to create three Catholic churches in town, but also the big changes that have forced them to alter their direction now as the century unfolds. The Catholic priest, Father Jeffrey Lucas, mentioned in the article about the churches, well, adaptation is a sign of life. And when I read that story, and I wondered how the congregations are taking the change, because I know the congregations generally get a little anxious around changes like this. I know several people who go to those churches, and I asked them. Mostly the answer was a shrug and words like, well, something drastic had to happen. Attendance was down. People didn't want to go to Mass on just Sunday mornings as much. And the buildings cost a lot of money to keep up. So I could understand that, certainly, but it made me remember quite suddenly a question actually, that somebody asked me after I got here in 2019. And I don't specifically remember who it was, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't anyone here with us today. And the question was a simple one. Are we beyond our prime at UUCM? Are we beyond our prime at the Meadville Unitarian Universalist Church? And I thought about it for a moment, and I answered, well, yes and no. It's a classic Unitarian Universalist answer to any question. The yes answer was a simple one. declining membership, fewer children and young adults, financial challenges, and changing times all indicated a period of retrenchment in front of us. I also recall saying that the Meadville church was like many other churches, whether UU or otherwise, with fewer people interested in organized religion and more people trying to figure out their own spiritual paths in life. But what about the no answer? I said no because I suspect the Meadville UU Church has been through a number of similar challenges over nearly 200 years. I imagine crises like the Civil War, the 1918 flu, the Depression, the Great Depression, Vietnam, the Civil Rights Movement, the Temperance Movement, the Suffrage Movement. All of these times over nearly 200 years have undoubtedly caused stress and fluctuations in size and in mission. There were probably times when people sat around and wondered, are we going to make it till next year? And who knows how many times this church has had to reinvent itself in its role in this larger area and in Meadville in the last 185, 90 years. Now, I've not been able to go through the archives of the church, although I've gone through some of them. And my guess is that such crises, almost an existential crisis, happen probably every generation or two. So I'm guessing maybe 5 to 10 times since 1825 that we've had to wonder, so what's happening next? Are we beyond our prime? What do we do to get people excited again? And what you've done on every single of those occasions is you've adapted. And this is another such place. Now, as you've probably guessed, the service, what we need is here, is partly based on a letter that you've received this week from Board President Rick Hogren. He wrote in part, in the accompanying document, we propose a new vision for UUCM, note a few assumptions that inform it, and suggest ways that it might change our church life. And he goes on to say, our goal is to stimulate your creativity, and I would add here curiosity, by providing a sense of where we might be heading and the landscape through which we are navigating, without presuming to know where our collective thinking and feeling, I'll add, might lead us. Thank you, Rick, for that, and all the other words that you wrote for that report. So what new future do you think the UU Church of Meadville will help build? There are many possibilities. First of all, there's no one right way, as I said earlier. There's no one wrong way either. I'm going to mention some of the possibilities before we head to breakout rooms to consider your own ideas about what the future of the Meadville UU Church will be. Up until, well, at least March 1st of last year, things were, well, pretty normal. But the pandemic year has changed everything upside down and inside out. A year ago, March was when our assumptions, what COVID busted us loose from our assumptions. Assumptions that, well, things will change, but we'll deal with it, and we know we will. That little would change for this congregation in upcoming years. Now, however, the reset, the pandemic year, has caused us to be invited to do a reset of our sense of mission in the larger community, let alone our own mission to be with each other in the sanctuary. Pandemic year gave us a chance to step back from in-person worship and wonder, okay, how do we get together now remotely? We began to plan for the preservation and renovation of our buildings. We adapted ourselves to online live streaming Sunday services. Attendance wasn't great, but the important thing is that we were here for one another. We began the very difficult conversation about race and racism in America, and we will continue that as the year moves on. And we cared for one another even when we couldn't be here together in person. And that's probably the most powerful thing that I think you, I, and we have done in the last year and a quarter. What we realized, I think, was that the future of this church is not written in stone. We have a golden opportunity to step away from, well, this is how it's always been done, to what do we create for ourselves and the larger community in Meadville? And very importantly, the question, at least in my mind as a transitions minister, is how do we make ourselves visible and exciting? Because we cannot simply exist for ourselves and no one else. And we also need to remember that Sunday is going to be the central part of our worship experience together, but we have 6 other days a week that we can be active. So what are those visible ways in which we can become more visible in the community? Here are a few that come to mind. Some of them are already in progress. Imagine installing solar panels on top of the parish house. Imagine installing 1 or more heat pumps to make heating and cooling less expensive and manageable. That's environmental awareness. And I would say probably would be the first church in Meadville to install solar panels. That's visibility. What about the use of the parish house other than Sunday mornings? Well, we have the preschool, and they seem to be gaining in attendance and settling in. Other community groups meet here weekly and daily as well. And right now, thanks to your board and to good work that Deb has been doing and others, we're looking at major renovations and repairs to the downstairs areas in the parish house. New paint for the hallway, new signs pointing to bathrooms, restoration of the parlor or living room to its former beauty. Oh yes, and there's also the need for a commercial kitchen for weddings, the preschool, and much more. And then, of course, hybrid services, and we talked about those a little bit earlier. Kirsten and Amy and Rick and I and others have been talking about how do we not only go back to in person, but also live stream so that others not locally with us can join us. Personally, one of the ideas that I like, especially for the use of the parish house, is as a recovery center. I expect that mental health and addiction issues are going to continue to rise as social and economic anxiety continue to affect us all. Addiction and other issues such as mental health, as you know, are all around us. And I think they're going to get more intense as time goes on. What if there could be other 12-step meetings like Narcotics Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous, just to mention 2, along with the AA meetings we have here now? What about alternative recovery groups like SMART, Buddhist recovery groups, and others? What about benefit concerts in the sanctuary? And I've mentioned this before the pandemic. Wouldn't it be great to have benefit concerts here from time to time, and no charge, donation only, and even maybe someday, if we get heat pumps, this could be air conditioned in the summer. There are all kinds of possibilities. Rick and others have mentioned using the parish house for movement classes like Qigong, yoga, meditation, prayer, and much more. And going back to Wendell Berry's poem, when I listen to the words of movement, like Qigong, yoga, and so on, when I go back to his poem to the very end, and he says, and we pray, not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. Imagine if we find ways to accomplish that, not only for ourselves, but for others in the larger community. How do we help the spiritual seeker find quiet, clarity, and their own path to wisdom without dogma? How do we go beyond what I need to what we need as we move into our third century? To me, that is the primary question of a we rather than just an I. Truly, in my opinion, what we need is here. All we need to do is find it. What do you think? So let's move into our breakout rooms with the question that comes up again. What new ways can UUCM partner with other organizations to support the larger community? Or if you wish, just to brainstorm of how can we visibly be part of the larger community in positive ways. Thank you.
Let's take a little bit of time now for silent reflections on mostly joys that we heard here today, and as well as those that are unspoken in our hearts. I don't know whether you can hear the symphony of birds, but I'm thinking, I don't know whether it's at our house or at Peggy's or what, but it's just a beautiful background for the silent reflection. As Alex extinguishes the chalice in the sanctuary, these are closing words from former President Barack Obama. The future rewards those who press on. I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. I don't have time to complain. I'm going to press on.
I want to thank you all for joining us on this Sunday, June 6th, for what appears to be our last Zoom service. In a moment, I will put you all into breakout rooms. If you wish to stay, please do. If you do not, I ask that you kindly find your way to the leave button for the meeting, and we will see you all in person very soon. Thank you for going on this journey with all of us through Zoom.
Thanks.